Hey Lance, so where are you from originally?
I grew up here in Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
Okay, awesome. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. How you grew up, where you went to school, what your parents were like.
I grew up in an upper middle class neighborhood on Sherwood Drive here in Cape Girardeau. Um, my parents were upper middle class. My dad owns a lumber business and very, very conservative. Um, um, I don't know what else. Um, I went to Elmer Schroeder School. It was a really great school, one of the best, elementary schools in town still, I think. And when I got to the seventh grade is when anybody nowadays would have noticed that I was severely ADHD. Um, I did okay in school until we started having to change classes and keep track of all of our books and keep things organized on our own, and then I just flunked out. And my parents didn't understand what was going on, and neither did I. And the seventh grade was also when I got drunk the first time, and that gene runs in my family. So I was pretty much a full-blown alcoholic by the time I was 13 or 14, even though we didn't really know it. Um, I, I didn't make it in high school. I think my assistant junior high principal is the one that just told me to go ahead and drop out and get my GED because I couldn't deal with the structure of it, which I did. Um, I was pretty much just a party animal in my high school years. What would have been my high school years. I played guitar. I got really, really into that, and that was the one thing that I could hyper focus on and do very well. So I learned all the Van Halen songs and everything. Got to play at all the parties, and I knew all the people that were older than me, and everything. So I was a party animal. Um, at some point, I guess I realized how things got very dark for me, and I think that was when the alcohol went from partying to self-medicating. And people say that like it's a less form of, abusing alcohol, but it's really, for me, it was a lot worse when it turned into something like that. Um, um, I did make it through high school. I did get my GED. I managed to get into college at some point. I had a brief period of about maybe 2.5 years where I quit drinking and I started going to church and did the altar thing and got saved and all that, and managed to get enrolled in college. And I had to struggle really, really hard just to barely make it through college because I didn't have any organizational skills and I didn't know how to study or anything. The ADD thing still wasn't something that was known, and my alcoholism was still something I didn't understand. And I went to a Bible college in Kansas City eventually, Mid-America Nazarene College. It's in Olathe, Kansas. And that's when I saw some of my friends who were Christians that would go out to the bar and drink, and everything. And so I thought, well, it might be all right. And every time I did it, I'd wind up completely shit-faced out of my mind and doing a bunch of embarrassing things, and then I'd feel guilty about it, wouldn't do it for a while. But all that time, I really never understood what it meant to be an alcoholic, that you just can't drink ever. And nobody in my family, I think, really understood it either. Back in the 80s, it wasn't so much of I guess, to say it simply, nowadays somebody would have spotted that way back when I was in eighth grade, But now, back then, it wasn't like that at all. And so I went on the road with a Christian band. They picked me up just by chance at college, and we were the house band at a camp in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and then we toured around California during the week and did a tour across Canada and all this stuff. But we had a break between California and Canada, and about 2 weeks where I stayed in Fresno by myself. And I went on the worst bender that you could imagine, and it ruined the whole rest of the tour for me and everything. But anyway, I don't know how detailed you want me to be about all this, but um, I I struggled with the with alcoholism, not knowing what it was. I remember I knew something was wrong with me. Even when I was in the college and in that period of sobriety, I was what they call a dry drunk, but I didn't know what that was. I was depressed all the time, anxiety so bad that it was giving me cluster headaches and that sort of thing. And I remember reached out to a counselor and I just knew something was wrong and I didn't know what, but he kept wanting to talk about my binge drinking, which would be a night or two here and there, and then I wouldn't do it for a while. And I kept, shying away from it. And one day I said, the alcoholics are the guys in the alley, the guys you see with the wine bottle laying in the alley. And he said something that I'll never forget. If you don't get this taken care of now, if you don't get control of it and recognize it for what it is, you will be one of the guys in the alley. And I guess he might as well have been a prophet because it took about 15 years, but yeah, I became one of the guys in the alley. That's after a marriage, a failed marriage to my high school sweetheart, and that caused lots of problems in our marriage. But me, I still wasn't aware of what it was to be an alcoholic. But I guess this is all getting to where, how did I become homeless? And I was a functional alcoholic until I got divorced when I was 30, and I'd managed to have a lot of things that I wanted. The house I wanted, a recording studio, had nice instruments and a band to play with and everything. And I lost all that at the same time when I was 30. And within 3 months, all of it was gone. And lost contact with my son. And that's when I just gave up. And I just figured I'd just sit down on the curb and they said I had a passive death wish, which means I wasn't going to actually go and take action to kill myself, but I really didn't care, and that was true. That's the way I was. And my 30s, where it was struggling to try to stay out of jail with my child support and accumulate, which going to jail was something I had never fathomed could ever happen to me. And I guess the longer I was out there on the street, a year I was in Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, for an upper middle class rich kid that was pretty much spoiled, in a safe neighborhood, being homeless in Little Rock was quite an eye-opening experience. I actually think I started thinking that I died and I was in hell, and this was just a slow descent to get there. Didn't think I would ever get out of there, and it's a really funny story about how I eventually did, but which involved a bunch of Pentecostals. I slept behind their church on a Saturday night trying to ride my bike back north, and they invited me in the church service and baptized me and had me speaking in tongues and gave me a ride home. So it was all fake. I mean, they dunked me under and pulled me up, and I went chickaloo muckalaka something or another, and then everybody laughed, or cheered, and all that. They drove me back to Cape, and after I guess 35, I could never get things. It was just a disaster. I mean, just going from one place to the other, not really knowing what I was going to do when I woke up. I went to rehab 20 times, but I would always get out and be in the same situation I was before. I was a dual diagnosis. My ADD, it was untreated, so it carried on into my adulthood, and I had problems with any job I got, whether I was sober when I was there or not. I could never get that part of it and the alcohol treatment part of it at the same time. And I could never get, when you go to rehab and they just kick you back out and you're back where you started, if you're going to sleep outside when it's cold or with the mosquitoes or whatever, why wouldn't you want to be drunk? And I think that's the circle that people get in, getting homeless, and why it's people don't understand it's not easy to turn it around and to get out of that once you're really there, especially once you get used to it. And Um, I don't know. I mean, my story has a lot of twists and turns. I'm not really sure how detailed you want me to be with everything.
When you were in Little Rock, or when you were on the street, were you ever physically attacked, robbed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got beat up with a stick, and this eyebrow was hanging off one time. Yeah, I got robbed, I think, 3 times in Little Rock. One of them was at gunpoint, and I think I had $4. And one time they all just surrounded me, made me take my shoes off and everything. I stayed in a homeless shelter in Little Rock, and I actually landed a job at this convenience store, and I still looked pretty clean cut back then, like for a homeless guy. And I was cutting through these neighborhoods to get to work, and this black guy in the place I've gotten to be friends with pulled me aside and said, "Are you the white boy that's been walking through here?" And I said, "Yeah, I go that way to go to work." He said, "The only reason they hadn't beat me up is because they thought I was a cop." That's the only reason somebody that looked like me would be walking through there. But go ahead, what else did you? Yeah, I was attacked and beat up. I was randomly attacked but when they were going around playing that knockout game, and got beat up then. But okay.
What about during the colder months, winter? What was...
You do whatever you can. A lot of times there's a bathroom that's heated down by the river, and if you can manage to hide in there behind the toilet, then you won't freeze to death. Or you can go in and idle there and keep warm. Try to find somewhere to build a fire, but it's hard. I've gotten in apartment buildings and just hid in the laundry room. Just anything, any way you can get inside. The Huddle House was they would let me sit in there and drink coffee all night, and buy a cup of coffee, and they'd just give me free refills and let me sit there. In Little Rock, they had a homeless shelter there, and it was full quite a bit of the time. They had this place called the Fun Wash, coin-operated laundromat, and I guess the guy just left it open in the wintertime just as a secondary homeless place. And so, anyway, any more?
Did you ever have any moments where you were like, "This is it, I'm dying"? Did you ever think that you were close
Many times.
to
Yeah.
death?
Yeah.
Could you tell me about one of those moments?
Okay, I guess, and that was when I really realized I didn't care about it. Was in Little Rock. Like I said, I had a lot of headaches and cluster headaches, and I took lots of BC powder. I had an esophageal aneurysm blow up in my stomach, and I almost died from that. That was the funny thing about that. I was in the hospital, and I knew that I was bleeding to death, and I didn't care. I mean, it was kind of it sort of surprised me, because I was more like a hypochondriac before that. That was when I realized I really didn't care. And so there were a lot of other times. There's a couple of times I'm pretty sure I had hypothermia. I think the guy that stuck the gun in my face was going to shoot me, but I was in a cul-de-sac and a car came down the street. So, and I wasn't scared then either. The most recent one was I had another bleeding episode in my stomach, and I came real close then. They had to put an IV in my neck to get blood in me fast enough. That was about 2.5 years ago, I think. I had alcohol-induced cardiomyopathy, which is a heart attack, from alcohol. And here, up until a year and 10 months ago, for the previous 8 years, I had seizures if I didn't drink. So when I got up in the morning and didn't have any money, and I started getting the shakes, that could have been any time. Any one of those, seizures could have killed me. And so, yeah, a lot.
What about friends and family during that time? Did you have anybody you were in contact with, anybody you talked to?
My grandmother on my mother's side, my cousin Chris, my sister, mom and dad, they didn't really want anything to do with me after a while. And like I said, my family's really conservative, exclusive. They went from upper middle class to wealthy, and so not much.
You mentioned you have kids.
I have a son. My son is 22. He lives in St. Louis, and his mother was the daughter of the pastor when I first started going to church, and we separated for a long time. She just went to another school, and so did I. But got married when we were 25. And kind of got back together, and we had a son together. And yeah, he was 8 months old when that's when I lost everything. She moved to St. Clair, Missouri with him. And that was the worst thing, was losing him. Everything else was just stuff, but go ahead.
What's your relationship like with him now?
Oh, well, that's kind of a funny story in itself. Last year, not last January 19th, but the previous January is when I got sober. This lady and her grandmother let me move in, and there was a time there I thought that I was going to be back out on the street, and I seriously thought I was going to start drinking again. Well, unbeknownst to me, my sister had gotten in contact with my son, had been talking to him for about 3 months, and it was that same day at 6 o'clock in the evening, I got a message on my phone that said, Evan Adams, that's him, wants to send you a message. And we talked from 6 o'clock until midnight, and then I knew I wasn't going to drink. So it's kind of weird. It just came out of the blue right then. But since then, we talk on a regular basis, and everything just for the past couple of years, past year and a half. So.
How long have you been sober?
1 year and 10 months. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Had you ever had a period where you were sober for a while before?
Oh yeah, the time from 18 till about 21, I think I was, and then that's when it started. That's when I started trying to drink again, but it would always wind up in a disaster. So, yeah.
What are you doing now to treat your ADD and?
I can't get treatment for my ADD because you get labeled an addict and they can't give you any medications for it. And plus, I'm 53 over the hill, so I've already screwed up. So what's the point? That's a frustrating issue for me. I will tell a story about that real quick. When I was in the 9th grade, they gave you aptitude tests where you fill in the dots, and all that, the one I'm talking about. I always bombed all of them. I didn't even really pay attention. Well, one day some idiots I knew, his name was Russell McLean, broke into the Super D pharmacy and stole all the Ritalin. And they gave it to me that day. We just thought it was speed, or something. I took it and I aced both days of the tests. And the principal was kind of freaked out, called my mom in there and couldn't explain why. And I didn't know either, really. I couldn't say, well, this guy gave me some, pills I took. But looking back on it, that's what they used to treat ADD with. And so I still struggle. I have to get jobs that are very simple and routine, or I can't, my mind just won't, it just switches channels all the time. I have to have a job that I can just think about something else or a million other things while I'm doing it. Music was never like that. I could hyper-focus on that, nothing else. Never. So, anyway.
What do people misunderstand?
Hold for a second. You said
2 minutes.
Oh.
What do people misunderstand the most about you?
I don't know. My ex-boss, the guy that owns Shivelbines down there, says I'm peculiar, whatever that means. Things that seem to be interesting to other people aren't to me at all, and the things I talk about seem totally weird to them. So I don't have very many. I got a lot of friends, but I don't have very many really close friends. So I don't know. I've always felt outsider. I'm the black sheep of my family. So.
What do you think would give you the life that you want?
I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. everything's always been really frustrating for me. And I had anxiety so bad, I mean, when I was younger, it caused me physical symptoms. And one day I just quit struggling with the things that were making me anxious. And being adult ADD, not only is it overdiagnosed, so nobody really thinks much about it, it's like trying to run a car engine without oil in the motor. And so, there. And I'm kind of having a down day today, so if I sound a little nihilistic, that's probably why. Anything else?
I think that's good. You were real, you were honest, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried to be. I mean, there's much more to it than all that, but.